best thing about being a lawyer is blank?
Freedom. The best thing about being a lawyer is being able to manage your own destiny and spend time with your family.
Welcome to Hot Docket, the show where we talk about winning marketing strategies that have built the most successful law firms.
Join us every 2 weeks for the latest trends and tactics to grow your law firm.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Hot Docket podcast. Today, we've got a really interesting subject. We're going to be talking about vaccine injury lawsuits with Jon Groth.
Yeah, so the interesting part about this is it's an angle that I've never seen on the vaccine lawsuit side. I think we've seen a couple cases, things like Zostavax, that are mass torts, and they're structured in a very different way. Jon's going to walk us through a totally different practice area that I just think is very interesting.
Yep, it's going to be fascinating. And I think with that, rather than you and I just continuing to talk about things we don't know about, let's get Jon introed here. Jon, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully I'll shed some light on this practice area. There's a number of us that do this, so it's not like it's new. It's been around for decades upon decades, but I'll happily answer any questions, and hopefully I can speak somewhat eloquently so it'll make sense.
I'm sure you're going to do amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to start Groth Law?
How much time do we have to talk about this? So I have some interesting stories that I won't go into too much on the record, but now I kind of have to because I just alluded to that fact. But so I graduated law school from Marquette in 2000. I worked at a general practice law firm, doing all kinds of stuff from reading real estate deals to wills. I had a federal bankruptcy trial involving a probate claim between two octogenarians fighting over their mother's house, and she had just passed away. So I think she was 100 and something when she passed away. So very unique things that I did. I did collection on a nationwide basis for that firm for one of their companies. So all kinds of stuff, and that was fun. And I'm really glad I got the opportunity to do the general practice, jack of all trades, master of none type thing. And then I was wooed away to do injury law, and I worked for one of the bigger firms in Wisconsin as their trial lawyer for about 8 years until about 2010. Then March 1st of 2010, I started Groth Law Firm. And then it's been a wild ride ever since. So we were in our basement initially. My dog is running back and forth. My kids are crying, all that kind of craziness where it just was me looking at a block wall in our basement, trying to manage the practice. And then we eventually grew and grew and grew. And now we're, 5+ attorneys. I say plus because we just hired a new attorney, so I got to add up how many attorneys we have. We have a full-time HR director, different divisions, pre-lit, litigation, the vaccine division, things like that. We purchased another practice, Samster, Conklin, Saffron, a few years ago, and that's when I learned about the vaccine practice. Like you, we do mass tort stuff in that we get cases in and then we refer them out to other attorneys. Some we were handling in-house. So I was aware of that kind of aspect of the law, but nothing like this. This was kind of eye-opening where I had to really learn kind of a brand new practice area that was very unique and just has one jurisdiction in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims over there in DC. So that's unusual. We have clients. We had a client that was in Siberia. We have clients all over the world. So that's unique too. I'm used to just helping people in Wisconsin. Anyway, I'll let you ask more questions. I'm not answering the question that was posed.
No, I think you're doing a good job. I think what I was going to ask next is how you stumbled into it, but you were saying that you ended up purchasing a firm that had this division already within it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the criteria for the vaccine injury cases and what the most common examples look like?
Sure. So SIRVA is the most common thing. You're going to hear people talk about a SIRVA injury, shoulder injury as the result of vaccine administration. shoulder injury as the result of vaccine administration. So you get a shot, sometimes it's too high, sometimes it's too low, and you have maybe an immediate onset of pain, or it could be you faint, syncope. It could be numbness, tingling, frozen shoulder, things like that. You have to have some notification, some notice, some evidence that this occurred within a couple days, and then it has to last for about 6 months. Unless you have surgery or some catastrophic type event happen, then it can be less than 6 months. But usually it has to last for 6 months. Once you meet the 6-month mark, then it's a scheduled table injury. And there's a whole, I mean, I can pull them up here online. There's literally like a table. If it's kind of like workers' comp, if attorneys do workers' comp law, there's like a schedule of injuries. It's kind of like that, where it'll say, okay, flu vaccine, do you have these symptoms, where the pain within a couple of days, did it last over 6 months? Once you have that, then it's a table injury, and you don't have to really do much else other than file your petition with the court, and then go through, you give them all the medical records and such. The U.S. Court of Federal Claims is the proper court to administer this, and you get a special master assigned. The Department of Justice comes with their attorneys. They take all the medical records and they review them with Health and Human Services experts, who then will say, this or that is what we believe is related to the injury. And then you negotiate back and forth as to whether this symptom or that symptom should be included, and then eventually they will give you a proffer or give you an offer to settle the case, and then you negotiate on that. And then the nice thing is the money goes right to the victim. So the client gets X amount of money in addition to, or sorry, not including, I should say, medical expenses. So it's not like we're dealing with subrogated parties, or this is a different kind of situation. And the client's usually happier because I'm not taking a third of that fee, or I'm not taking a third as my fee, or 40%, or whatever the fee is. They get their money, and then I submit my fees, my hourly fees, and my staff's hourly fees to the court. The court then reviews everything, and then they will send us separately a check for our fees. So it really, in my mind, it puts the client first. The client's hopefully happy because the money's going to them. Nobody else is getting a portion of their fees. And while they're long gone and enjoying their compensation for their injury, then we have to get paid. So you're not having any issues with that. So it's a pretty decent system.
Do you have any idea of what the prevalence is of those injuries occurring?
Gosh, Jabal, one of our attorneys, and I were just at the vaccine injury compensation program, the bench meet, the bar meeting, bench and bar meeting, where the judges were there and we were there, and they had all kinds of slides. And I wish I would have prepared. You would have told me that in advance, because I would have pulled them up. But I don't know off the top of my head what the prevalence is, but I can certainly find that, and that would be a cool thing to have to tell you. I can tell you honestly, I'm shocked or surprised that this occurs so much. For example, this is a good story. Last year, I was a guest on a podcast, and it was a news reporter, maybe in Colorado, I want to say, somewhere out west. And she's interviewing me, and at the end of the interview, we're talking in part about vaccine cases and such. And she says, I got a flu vaccine 3 years ago tomorrow. And I know it was 3 years ago tomorrow because it was like her birthday or something like that. And she said, I had symptoms within 24 hours. It lasted. I had diagnostics. I had PT, frozen shoulder kind of symptoms for a year. So it met the criteria. And she said, I didn't know about this until you just told me. And I was like, you need to file something. I think you have a claim, but there's 3 years. You only have 3 years to act. So that just goes to show there are people who have these injuries, and they don't know about it, it's a matter of just telling them. And we don't have the Camp Lejeune kind of money. We don't have, it's not like this big mass tort that you're going to expect to have that kind of different kind of aspect where it's contingency fee and you can work in mass. It's more of a single event practice. So you don't have law firms that are advertising, every other ad for 3M or ear protection or the Camp Lejeune or whatever else on Facebook or on TV. You just don't have it. But I bet you if there was that, if more people talked about this, there'd be a lot more people who would realize, oh yeah, I did suffer that, that problem. I am one of the victims of these SIRVA type injuries.
Are there any other injuries beyond that, beyond the freezing shoulder sort of symptoms that qualify?
So do you know that one song, I'm Sailing Away? I'm sailing away. Or sailing. Christopher, well, no, I'm saying the wrong song. Christopher's Cross. Didn't he sing Sailing? Sailing, I'm sailing. Come on, sing it. Sing the song with me. What's that song? Christopher Cross.
Christopher Cross? Who is that?
Don't you know who Christopher Cross is?
No idea who Christopher Cross is.
You're embarrassing yourself. You don't know who Christopher. He was a 1970s boat yacht, yacht rock star.
There's no chance I would know that.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
You think the majority of people are going to know that?
That's embarrassing for you.
Maybe I'll be wrong.
And you will be amazed at how beautiful a voice he has.
That's our homework tonight.
For example, Christopher Cross had Guillain-Barré syndrome. Did you ever hear of Guillain-Barré, GBS? It kind of shuts you down. It shuts down your nervous system. You kind of have to learn to walk again. So I just say that because there's been news articles about this guy over the past 5+ years, that he is an example of somebody who survived this horrible condition. Guillain-Barré syndrome is something that we see very frequently in our flu vaccine practice. Is
that like BAR? I always thought it was like Julian Barr or Gillian Barr. Is it the same thing?
Correct. Guillain-Barré.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So GBS, it's easier to say. But yes, so there's that. There's hearing loss cases where you may have a nervous condition that it affects your hearing loss. There's a number of different things. If you look at the table, I could just start reading things on the table about different conditions. It's very scientific, very technical. Lots of expert work. We have experts that are Stanford, Harvard, all the big name schools out there. People who are virologists, for example, are just experts who are very much like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. Those kind of really in the weeds experts about molecular biology, and that's really what you're dealing with. How did this vaccine change your, in essence, molecular structure and affect either your shoulder, Guillain-Barré, whatever else, your hearing loss, things like that. So yes, there's a good number of them. There's pages that this table comprises of that has a lot of different matters that we can deal with. And the most common though is simply the flu vaccine. And going back to the prevalence, I know we had a new client today, at least one today, and it's usually at least a couple a week. And I'm just little old Groth law firm here in Wisconsin. So, there's certainly bigger firms that only do vaccine practice, and they paid, for vaccineinjury.com or, those kind of things. I'm sure they're seeing a lot more of those than I am.
Yeah. So I think this is as good a segue as any into the question I had, which is you must get a decent amount of inbound for a unique case type like vaccine injury. And I imagine a lot of it doesn't meet criteria. Has the harder problem for you been marketing to acquire the leads for the practice or building back-end operational processes for intake?
Fantastic questions. You must have done this before. You must have handled a few cases in your years.
A few.
So just a few, huh? Intake is not that bad. We use a system on our, we use Filevine. So everyone knows about Filevine, right? So we have Filevine. We have it set up in that you can go through our intake and check different buttons, and then it populates with other questions, and that's somewhat easy. and especially because it's more of a scheduled kind of claim, it's pretty easy. If you got the flu vaccine on May 1st and had no symptoms until June, that's a problem. Or you didn't tell a doctor until June, that's a problem. So those are easy questions to ask. And then we ask for proof, or is there anybody else that you could talk to that they would be able to sign an affidavit saying yes, he or she was holding the shoulder or is showing pain, those kind of things you can show too. But so the intake is not that difficult. The bigger problem is you have somebody who comes and says, I had X, Y, and Z take place. I told my doctor about it, and I went to the doctor within 3 days or what have you. And then we start signing them up and having them sign authorizations and such. And then we're going through all the records, and we discover, they had a shoulder injury the month before, and the records are very messy with whether this is related to a flu vaccine or something else. And there's a lot of that where we're reviewing a lot of medical records and trying to ascertain what the appropriate cases are or not, and trying to look at which cases, which are not table cases but probably are related to a flu vaccine, whether those cases are going to be cases that we could file a petition on, file a claim, and have an expert like somebody from Harvard or some fancy schmancy doctor come and give an opinion that this flu or this vaccine caused this unique injury, because it might be similar but it's not exactly correct, or not exactly on point. Sorry. So you have that aspect too. So go back to your questions. What were the two questions, and make sure that I answered them?
Yeah, I think you pretty much answered it. Basically, I just wanted to understand, is marketing and finding these cases the hard part, or is the hard part screening them, getting them signed up for the good cases, and then conversely turning down the ones that are no good?
Yeah.
Kind of a
So
mess.
I kind of went over the intake. So, we've done some crazy marketing, and just crazy meaning like TikToks kind of stuff, right? Where you're doing TikTok and having videos on this, talking about this on YouTube, writing as much as we can on our GBP, things like that. And really what I've been doing a lot is simply this, where we're talking on podcasts to as many people as we can. Anybody I talk to, I tell them about shoulder injuries. I have a bunch of neighbors and friends, and then a good number of neighbors and friends. I don't want to sound too hoity-toity, but doctors that I know, and I ask them, "Have you ever heard of SIRVA?" And they're like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a proctologist. Why would I hear about shoulder surgeries?" But for even the general practice doctors, they don't know, because it's not something. They're usually treating symptoms. They're not treating cause. To a large part. So, yeah. So the big problem I have, I think, is what we said before, not having enough knowledge out there that this is a viable claim. We have run campaigns, PPC campaigns, Facebook ads, things like that, and there's been no magic bullet with this because it is such an unusual thing. And the bigger problem too, more recently, is COVID. They wouldn't let us run campaigns because you couldn't even talk about quote unquote vaccines, right? Because you may be, maybe part of some disinformation scheme. That was a big problem for a while. Was every single interview I did was about COVID. And I was like, COVID's not part of the claim. You can't make a claim for COVID. You can, but it's a whole different system that, good luck. I don't know of any lawyers that even take those cases anymore or ever did, because they're not part of the compensation program. You don't get your attorney's fees separately. It's very limited. There's all kinds of problems with it. And it was just very difficult to even pursue those. So we're guessing, and there are at least 2 or 3 bills out there in Congress that are heading hopefully to the president someday, that will put COVID onto the compensation program. And we just hope it's done in time, or there'll be a look back or something in time that will be able to help some of the people that suffered these injuries more than 3 years ago, because the vaccines at this point are coming on over 3 years old.
The actual vaccines being administered, you said a majority of these are going to be for the flu vaccines. Is it the actual like medical side of what is in the flu vaccine that's causing it, or it's the administration of it being too high or too low in the shoulder? So it could conceivably be any vaccine. It's just more about how it's been administered.
Yes, it is either too high, too low, and it's in addition, it can be the reaction of your body to what's in the actual vaccine. Going back to this relates to vaccines that are meant for children. So again, going back to COVID, COVID didn't even have a chance of being on in the program until they said that this was allowed for, meant for kids. Once they allowed it to be administered to kids, that pushes it as a possibility for a table injury, or to be in the program, I should say. So here, and I can just start reading off some of the vaccines. I mean, there's hepatitis A vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine, the seasonal flu, which is the biggest one, the MMR, mumps, polio vaccines, things like that, that if you have these vaccines and have certain symptoms thereafter, then it can be a table injury. The case I'm trying to find that talks about the non-table injury is very specific, and it's a form of GBS, of Guillain-Barré, that our expert says that type of GBS is so similar to the table GBS, to the table injury, that the science dictates that it's not non-table, but that it was caused, sorry, the science dictates that it is non-table, but the cause of it is because of the biological structure, the molecular structure that caused the injuries similar to a table injury. So that's an example where it's cutting hairs, I guess, splitting hairs, I guess is the term, right? Splitting hairs, where it's almost right there. You just don't have the exact type of injury that you need to be a table injury, but you have doctors who say, this is so close, it's a close variant.
Got it. So jumping back into the process side of running your firm for this type of practice, I know that you brought up Filevine kind of being very important for this process. Are there any other tools or strategies that have been invaluable in that sort of process of qualifying, rejecting, signing up new clients?
I mean, I don't want to sound like an advertiser here. So there's a company that's in New York, and it's just oddly in Milwaukee, called the Expert Institute. So there's groups like that they'll help you find experts, and it's kind of nice because you can just let them run with it. And that's been really nice to have kind of in our back pocket, that when you're looking for an expert and you need a virologist with these credentials that deals with whatever, Guillain-Barré, things like that, having those kind of experts or those kind of companies in your back pocket, like Seek Expert Review, or what are the other books I get from time to time, right? I'm sure you've seen those books where they're really expert headhunters. That's been really helpful. And with a lot of our petitions that are documents that we file with the court, when we file an expert's report, experts cite everything, and that's what you have to do. You have to cite everything, and they're citing all these other, all of their learned treatises that they relied on in creating their report. That's in essence a learned treatise for us. So having the ability to go to experts, staff, a nurse attorney, or somebody to help gather that has been a big time saver for us. So that's, I guess, a technique. The other thing simply is just having staff who have done this, and this is very form based. So having these forms that are in place in Filevine, and then be able to doc gen certain things, have been fantastic. So that's a pretty good tool. Again, going back simply to Filevine and one of their add-ons, their Docs Plus, whatever it's called, right? It has been pretty helpful, or maybe it's Outlaw now, whatever they call it, Outlaw or Docs Plus.
So one thing you mentioned earlier was that you were talking to like doctors who might not have heard about SERPRO or SEPRA, whatever it is. However you
SIRVA.
SERVA.
Yeah.
Obviously I haven't heard of it. So SERVA. And you know, that's potentially a way to create awareness, which in the future can generate referrals and all those good things. Is this a case type you get peer referrals for? Like, are there other firms that are sending you these cases today, or are there restrictions that kind of make co-counsel untenable on that case type?
No, it's something honestly we do pretty frequently. I mean, there are cases that I maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that we had a case that we were reviewing, and as part of the bar, you talk to each other, and somebody else had almost the exact same case. It was a non-table injury, and they had a doctor that they had used in this other case and had a good result. And we said, this sounds like a great opportunity for you to help our client. So I think that happens pretty frequently, in honesty. A good percentage of the time, we have people who call us and say, hey, John, I got this medical malpractice case for you. I'm like, okay, what are the facts? I'm like, well, they got a vaccine. They got a flu. I think the nurse may have done X, Y, and Z, or the lab tech at the pharmacy did X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, wait, hold your horses. This is not med mal. This is probably a vaccine case. So that's happened a number of times where it starts with, I got a med mal case for you. And I think that's with most attorneys. When you are kind of niching down into a certain practice area, you get referrals from other attorneys who don't do it. I mean, I have bankruptcy attorneys who never want to touch a personal injury case, and I never want to touch a bankruptcy case. So I can see, I can certainly understand why. So that's something that is uh, why I like the practice area, because first off, you have to be licensed in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, so competition is much less, right? Aren't many of us who are licensed in that venue, I'll say, or jurisdiction. It's such a unique practice area that people don't want to touch it because they think they're going to mess up, which again is a valid concern. So that's why I think niching in any kind of practice area is important. So you know what you're doing, number one, and number two, so you can feed your family, because hopefully you'll get referrals from other attorneys. I think the proof's in the pudding. The numbers tell the story. If you look at cases and you can see, once you understand time on desk, average fees, the cost of acquisition kind of scenario, where you know what it costs to get these clients, and then how long it's going to take you to get money for those clients, and the luxury of knowing you're going to get paid whatever your attorney's fees are. You're never going to run out of this fund, right? I don't think any president, responsible or irresponsible, could take this fund away. Knock on wood, the famous last words. But so I mean, that's when I was looking at this. You look at, for example, car crash cases, and maybe this is a whole different podcast, but what are our fears? Our fears are they don't have insurance. Our fears are there's not enough insurance. There's hospital liens, collateral source, and then the long-term fears are what's going to happen with self-driving cars, and are we going to all be Elon Musk's friend in the future, or whatever it is? He's going to drive with us in every car. Those kind of concerns. Will that practice area stick around? So you have all those fears. With this practice area, it's a little bit different. I don't want to say it's evergreen, but it's different in that, especially after COVID, my analysis was vaccines are talked about more than ever. People are probably going to get them more because of what just happened a few years ago. So you're going to have more injured people that are out there. And it's more commonplace to talk about vaccines and get vaccines. So there's going to be a prevalence of less trained administering, where you have some person who just came in off the street and is a lab tech and punches you. So I thought that would be the possibility. And knowing that there's a guaranteed payment for my staff's time, my team members' time, my time, that is something that I really couldn't turn down, right? I mean, the biggest problem is it just takes forever to settle the cases, because the U.S. government is so incredibly slow, and getting medical records again is slow, but then getting them over to them and they're reviewing them maybe in 6 months. That's the biggest concern. The biggest concern I have about being able to uh, 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 handle the time on desk, and pay my staff. Luckily, we had a practice that's been around for a while, so we had income coming in. If I was a brand new lawyer getting into this practice, it might be difficult because you have to wait a long time to get any fees from the program.
And at that same time, are you also paying the expert fees to work up the
Oh yeah,
cases too? So
yeah,
it's pretty capital intensive.
yeah. And eventually, you get paid back for your expert fees. It's not something that, again, you don't eat that. It doesn't come out of the client's pocket. It comes out separately. The fund pays for that, but and you can make a request for like an interim payment of fees and costs. I think that's more of a theory than something that's in practice, because I can't remember the last time we ever did that. But there is that possibility. But yeah, gosh, I wrote a check for $11,300 today for a case. It's like, okay, doctor, I just paid for your, whatever. I don't know what's $11,000 a month for a car payment, a Lamborghini or something. I don't know what it is, or a second or third house mortgage. Yeah.
So you brought up something interesting where, yeah, it's very unlikely that you won't get paid because it's the government. There's no like bankruptcy scenario there. But you brought up time on desk. I'm curious what the average duration is from like intake, calling your firm and wanting to sign up, to the successful resolution.
Years.
How many on average?
Multiple years.
Okay.
On average, it's in excess of 18 months.
It's not too bad when you
Yeah.
put it next to the average motor vehicle claim. It'll probably be pretty
Well,
similar.
Now, sorry, so that assumes, let's say somebody calls us yesterday and they call us yesterday, I got a flu vaccine, I have pain. We wait for that 6 months. At that 6-month mark, then we gather all the records, and from that point, it's probably 18 months. So from the time of filing it until resolution, maybe or that is about 18 months. Because many times we're talking with the clients, but they haven't officially retained us, or they're waiting until they're the 6-month mark or something like that. So it is years. It is 18 months plus that we have to start incurring costs and then holding those costs.
Yeah. And at the same time, though, when you put that in perspective with some of the mass torts where Johnson & Johnson is filing for bankruptcy for a third time, and it's a decade long into some of those litigations already,
Yeah.
It still sounds relatively reasonable.
Well, yeah, it's true. So I was at that conference at Duke probably 4 years ago now, 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago now, and they were, they had, I forget the judges who were there, but the one judge from Louisiana who handled all the knee Vioxx cases in the 90s, he said he was still hearing motions on some claims for the Vioxx cases from literally the 1990s, and so that 20 some years for that. So I agree. Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I'll take 2 years versus 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about niche case types and, you niching down in your case types. I noticed when I was looking around on your website that your mom actually worked in nursing homes. So I was kind of curious, how has that affected your opinion on the nursing home abuse style cases?
Have you ever worked in a nursing home?
No, my wife did,
No?
but not me. No.
Oh man. I mean, you go to some of these nursing homes, and my mom worked in like billing in a nursing home, and for a summer, maybe it was 2 summers, I don't remember, in college, I was the handyman for that same nursing home. And you walk in, and I had one grandmother who was in a nursing home, one luckily who didn't have to go to a nursing home, but um, some nasty stuff that you see that even for a good nursing home, there's some nasty stuff that you see. You should never have to see somebody that you care for, even somebody you know, and just like say, hey, Bob, kind of that kind of care for as a fellow human, see somebody sitting in their own feces. I mean, that's just preposterous. So it didn't affect me. Some of the cases I see, I'm sure you guys have seen similar cases where just horrific injuries, horrific problems, that the only reason that those occurred is because it was just understaffing and negligence. And I feel no sympathy whatsoever towards going after the staff or hopefully getting them out of the nursing home racket, shutting down a nursing home or getting somebody's license pulled. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I think the level 3 and level 4, like
Oh,
pressure ulcers, the bed sores, it's a perfect example. You can't.
just horrific, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, my kids will be like, hey, Dad, look at this picture. I was like, whatever. I've seen some bed sores that would, make you vomit. So, whatever. My 16-year-old or 18-year-old will say certain things that's like, yeah, well, you don't understand what a lawyer actually does or what we actually do, right? Some of the things we've seen and heard and talked about is disgusting.
All right. So before we move on to our game, we usually conclude with a little game. I was curious that you trademarked a slogan, one click, that is it. I'm curious. Walk us through that decision. Is it something you recommend for other firms, and how that ended up working out for you?
So I have some of the best advice given to me was to be a lifelong learner. So I am always listening to podcasts, the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing with Conrad Sam and Geet Tsakalakis, and things like that, or the Ben Glass or Trial Lawyer Nation or whatever, all those different things. And marketing is a big one that I'm always listening to. So, and we have done a lot of traveling, with kids over the years, so you see lots of billboards. So long story short, I trademarked Groth Law, so people can't, in theory, bid on my name with PPC. And then I trademarked one click, that is it, just because it was out there. And I was shocked that Morris Bart let it go, right? I mean, Morris Bart down in Louisiana and such, he let it go. He has one click, that's it. It's not quite as it's not as cool as one click, that is it. It's much more, a proper way of saying it. One click, that is it. But we got in a fight with a law firm out of Pennsylvania because they have one click, that's quick, and they said it was too close. So long story short, why did I do it? Because I get into these times when I think it's a good idea and people tell me it's a good idea and I still think it's a good idea to trademark your name. And then, my plan eventually is to license out the one click, that is it, once we get the stuff kind of rolling on a nationwide basis. And then we'll have hopefully the ability to be like whoever did the one call, that's all, right? What was the guy's name down in Texas? Jerry Bryant, I think was the guy maybe who came up with that back in the 1990s. So that's why, if that answers your question. I think there were a couple of different things that I was thinking about and eventually pulled the trigger and did that.
Yeah, I was just curious about it and kind of wanted to hear the whole story around it.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the anti-conquesting aspect. You think that holds?
I know in some states it's against like bar ethics to bid on other attorneys' names.
But I do wonder about, even in the states, it's not against ethics if the trademark idea kind of affords that protection. We've never seen it.
You cannot include the trademark in the ad copy.
So if your firm name is trademarked, but can you still bid on the term and not include it in the copy?
That's correct.
You sure about that?
Maybe. Pretty positive.
Okay, fair enough. So we're going to end here, John, with a fill in the blanks game. So your standard kind of Mad Libs type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read the first one, and Andrew and I will kind of alternate going the rest of the way. So number one, vaccines are blank for you.
Good for you.
The best thing about being a lawyer is blank.
Freedom.
It can be more than one word, because I'm not sure if that was clear from the instructions.
Oh, it can be more than one word?
It can be more than one word.
Oh, the best thing about being a lawyer is being able to manage your own destiny and spend time with your family. I'm not stuck in a factory, or like my father running into burning buildings. So I prefer this job over that.
I thought you were going to say not being stuck in an office. And I was going to be like, oh, thanks a lot, John. Number 3, it really grinds my gears when blank.
People say, do you have a second?
That's a great answer.
Come to Wisconsin for the cheese, stay for the blank.
Oh, fishing. The outdoor life. I mean, today is the most beautiful day, and I'm stuck talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. It is literally 65 degrees and sunny. First day of fishing is this Saturday. It is beautiful.
Yeah, it's not too bad here either. Wouldn't shake your finger at it. And finally, number 5, one click blank.
Oh, that is it.
Yeah, teed them up. All right. Thanks for joining us, John. It's great getting to chat.
So I thought that was super interesting. I always like to learn about case types and litigation areas that we don't necessarily have experience ourselves. And it's just super interesting.
Yeah. I think the question with stuff like this is always what's going to happen from here? Is it going to continue to be kind of adopted by more and more firms as they see the opportunity? Or is it going to continue to just be one of those places where very few firms are going to stay niche down and figure it out?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the volume of injuries that are out there. And I think he was saying there are some, moats to entry there with the venue itself. And then there are some vaccines that just aren't even in play for that type of case. So very, very interesting all in though.
Yep, agreed. And for everybody listening, we're going to include John's info in the show notes and on the YouTube. Wow. Okay. In any case, we're going to include all that. So, if you have any clients that might have been injured by a vaccine and you're looking for a place to basically give them the option to talk to a specialist, you'll have John's info. Thanks for joining us on Hot Topic Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hot Docket. We're your hosts, Bobby and Andrew, founders of Mean Pug, the marketing agency for ambitious law firms.
Have questions about marketing or anything we covered today? Email us at bark@meanpug.com. Be sure to subscribe to learn more.